Welcome back to Gaming Grounds. It's your boy Action Jack, and I want to first and foremost thank you if you're viewing this video today. You're still a subscriber, or you may have run into it and you've seen me on the Winging It podcast, or even the Sandstorm podcast, or even Vito's podcast at one point in time, and you're interested to see my take or see one of my videos by myself to see exactly what it is that I actually speak on when it comes down to this channel. If you're new to the channel, thank you. This channel is solely based off of things that interest me, not just because it's news that's within the community. It's got to be something that is substantial enough for me to talk on. So today's main subject is centered around, I guess you could say, the state of VR from a casual perspective. By no means am I an enthusiast when it comes down to VR. Yes, I partake in a lot of games within VR, but I do not purchase every headset. I've purchased the Quest 2, Quest 3, and the PSVR2. But I have not gotten into PCVR. I've never been on the Vive side of things. So when it comes down to being an enthusiast, I am not one. We can even throw Apple Vision Pro in there. While it's very enticing and I have the equipment to purchase an Apple Vision Pro, I just don't see it as a product that I feel like is necessary for me, especially when it comes down to having a Quest 3. But that's not the point in this video. Let's get into what exactly it is that I want to, I guess, talk about in this video, or what interests me. As a casual gamer, there's a lot of things that I see on X, or that I see within the metaverse, or even when you talk about the videos from your most known content creators like a BMFVR. The state of VR, some will say it's in a very dire state because Quest, or Meta if you will, is the only provider really right now when it comes down to headsets. While there is a PSVR2, some feel like from a first party standpoint, PlayStation is not doing enough. Then you have those that feel like, hey, as long as we have good games, regardless of exclusives, we're in a good space. Then you have those that feel like we just need more graphic fidelity that comes down to some of these games, because if you play the Quest 3 from a mobile chipset, it's not the most visual appealing thing when it comes down to those games that tend to want to be more lifelike, in the vein of Half-Life Alyx, that people want that type of visual fidelity, if you will. Then you just have those that feel like there's just not that game yet. There's no killer app that has really pushed VR to that level. So with all of that, my take on this is this, right? From a community perspective, I feel like there's differing, I guess you could say, points, which that can go with any community. It just seems like it's very hit or miss, or everyone feels like there's only one solution to this problem. And some say there isn't even a problem to even have a solution for, but that's, up to however you feel. My take on it is, I think it will still remain to fail if, one, the price point isn't intact, and then two, you don't make it, I guess you could say, usable for the main consumer. Now, a lot of people gravitated towards Quest 2s when they first came out. It was a lot of advertising, a lot of fun, people getting into virtual reality for the first time, and it was a great thing. But in reality, a lot of people that were showcasing those VR headsets, they were kind of only playing games that were experimental, in the sense of like Richie's Plank, right? Getting people on actual planks, pushing them off, this thing and that nature is great video content, but it's not going to make anybody stay. But at the same time, it's hard to stay in VR. For a person such as myself, I play a lot of video games, but it's still hard for me to stay into VR, solely because there's only so much I could take. They tell you got to get your VR legs. I feel like I should have had 8 VR legs at this point, and there are still some games, even the most popular games, that will take me out. It's not an accessible device, if you will, for your everyday person. There are some people that will not get motion sickness. My kids can play Gorilla Tag for days, and I can't even play it for two minutes. My face gets hot, my ears get hot, and I already know the motion sickness is coming. So when you talk about the popular games like a Gorilla Tag that your gamers can't even play because they get motion sickness, that is a detriment to bringing people into that space. Speaking of space, to kind of segue into that, you gotta have the space. Everybody doesn't have the big living room, the big rooms, or whatever the case may be. We're in a period to where it's very expensive to even be in an apartment. Your typical 1-on-1 here in Florida can run you anywhere from $1,800 to $3,000, right? So if I'm talking about playing a PlayStation, Xbox, or a Switch, all I got to do is have a TV, a couch, or in a Switch case, all I got to do is have the Switch, and I can play that game. You know, I'm not going to get any motion sickness for the most part. I know some people still have issues with first person games, but I don't need space. I just need somewhere to put my TV and my console, plug it in, electricity, and we're good to go, right? So that's where I feel like is the problem with VR. You have to get people comfortable with not only being able to wear this headset on their face and be able to be in this world to where, one, they're not crashing into stuff, but at the same time be able to sustain it with, you know, feeling motion sickness. Then we look at, you know, how does VR games, I guess you could say, compare to the flat screen games. There are flat screen games that can be played within VR, but it's just more accessible when it comes down to flat screen games. If I wanted to pick up a Elden Ring, or if I wanted to pick up a Splatoon, if I wanted to pick up a Horizon, I can go to the store, buy it, call it a day. I already know what I'm getting. But when we talk about, you know, VR, just because I want to play it doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to play it, due to the fact that, you know, I may not be able to sit in the game that long. Or even when we talk about battery power, you know, that doesn't really equate to PCVR or PSVR2 because they're plugged in sets. But when we talk about Quest 3, that's a battery issue. And then even the other two, if we're talking about a lot of motion, I can't really move all that much unless I've gotten extenders, or if I have pulleys up on my ceiling. I can trip up on that cable. Some people have no issues, but you have to take that into account if you're talking about being a business that wants to, you know, market to the masses. But we also go into, you know, exclusives as well. You know, it's very important. You know, Quest, you know, they may have bought in their exclusives or already made some of theirs with your Asgard Ravs 2, and you know, Beat Saber is a key hit right now, you know, when it comes down to exclusives. Even though it was supposed to go to Pico, but now that Pico is phasing out, it's gonna be on Quest 3 at this point. Even if you look at PCVR with Half-Life Alyx, you know, it's exclusive on that right now, and that's what people want to see. Even though I feel like people look at that game and they think that's what they want, but in reality they haven't played it. They just see it from a graphical standpoint and like, oh, that's what, you know, VR needs, and reality is probably not what the masses want or look towards bringing them in. But I mean, to each his own. But if I look at a game like Asgard's Wrath 2, to where if you had a Quest 3, you got the game for free, which was pretty cool. But that is a game that really harped on its RPG elements, and then it's 100+ hours worth of gameplay. I don't know too many people that want to be in VR that long. Not saying that you have to go through the entire game with the VR headset on and you can do your breaks and do your segments, but that's a lot of time to commit to a game that's on your face. Like that is a lot. Like, there is no relaxing to play that game because it requires movement, opposed to if I had just like a controller, you know, I could sit back on the couch, kick up, you know, had the controller in my hand and just play the game. So there's certain key things that you have to pay attention to when it comes down to VR. And when we're talking about exclusives, while I feel like they're important, you have to make a VR type game that people can appeal to in a multifaceted way, whether it's standing, sitting, with controller, movement, whatever the case may be. Like, you have to encompass everybody when we talk about VR, because some may want to experience it and just can't. And then there are some that can experience it, but they just don't like the way that it operates or however it goes. One thing that I have not mentioned, or one device I have not mentioned in my conversation so far, has been Apple Vision Pro, and that's solely because it's not geared towards the gamer. It's more of a productivity thing and more of your Apple-centric type of device. I don't think you get a lot out of it if you're not within that Apple wall garden. You have to be committed. Now, for myself, I have a Mac Mini, a MacBook. I have an iPhone, which is what I'm recording on right now, which, you know, while my video looks extra crispy because my Logitech webcam is not giving me this content and this quality. But nonetheless, I mean, it looks like a very interesting product, but it's a $3,500 investment, which, once again, pricing is a key thing. Your everyday person that could have typically purchased this may not be able to purchase this, so you have to bring it down some, and that's typically where Quest wins, where PSVR2 in itself sort of kind of wins, because most had PlayStations already. So when this came out, it was more of a $500 investment opposed to a $1,000 investment. But I feel like Apple will figure that out. This was kind of a test bed. If anybody purchased it, you were the you know, the lab rat, if you will. You were the enthusiast to kind of help them with the kinks and kind of prepare to go to the masses as far as the natural and everyday consumer that they have now crafted into the iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, AirPods, Air Max. You know, that's that user that they want to get to. They understand that they can put a price on it and people will go purchase it because they believe in the quality and the product of Apple. So when we talk about will they go into this gaming space or entertain it at all, I feel like they can easily do so. It's just coming right back down to the questions of affordability. Is it comfortable? Which, from my understanding, I haven't tried one, but it's not the most comfortable device because of all the glass and metal that's on the headset itself. You have a battery that's attached, so you can't customize that yourself. There are no controllers, so there's a function there. Everything is, eye tracking. Eyes can get fatigued pretty easily, so there's a lot of things that they would have to tweak, or I feel like they would have to have two different tiers. You have your productivity tier and you have your gaming tier of headset. The entry point of a gaming headset, let's say they want to hit you for 5 to 6, and then with the Vision Pros or just the productivity type device, they can continue knocking you upside the head for 1,000 plus. I mean, you look at the MacBooks, it's very doable. People will purchase, but you have to have an affordable product, and I feel like they'll get into it at some point in time, but just not right now. They're trying to give you an elegant product for VR, if you will, and then now that they have their Apple Intelligence, which creatively they've switched AI into something for Apple. I think that will be integrated into the device itself, but they still have Apple Arcade. I don't know if they'll ever dive into VR for Apple Arcade, but it's definitely something I can foresee them doing. But nonetheless, when it comes down to the leader as far as gaming is concerned, is definitely Quest 3, but when you look at visuals, PCVR and PSVR2 are there. But I feel like this is a lane Apple could really get into if they really want to invest in this lane. But with all that being said, my key thing of what we need right now in VR, we do need competition. So I love Apple's buy-in for VR. PSVR2, whatever I thought about it, why I returned mine is a bit irrelevant to the subject, but more or less the reason why I returned mine is because I was a previous Quest owner. I'm not a fan of double dipping on games, so a lot of games you got for PSVR2 were Quest ports. Also, they were PSVR 1 ports, and then they were kind of VR modes within, flat screen games such as a Resident Evil. There were not too many, from the ground up games that were exclusive for PSVR 2 outside of Horizon, right? But you do have good games on there that look great. It's just, if I can get it somewhere else for a better price, then why would I come to you? It's not that I couldn't use my Quest 3 with my PC. It's not that I have to go get an expensive headset to do that. I think there's more that you have to bring to the table. So when we talk about things we need for Quest themselves, I say that they really need to stay away from that Pro line unless they're really just catering that to businesses. But if you're going to go the gaming route, they have to find a way to get these games to run smoother. I think the R&D should go into motion sickness. See how you can make this a seamless process for your everyday user. For me, I have corrective lenses, so I have to buy another product to be able to play in VR. So I don't mind spending the 50, but your everyday person may not want to. So I mean, find a way for people to use their glasses if they already have them. These things are not cheap, so it'll be a lot easier, but then still continue to give them the option. Also for Quest, if you're going to make accessories, make them to where they're sustainable. Like, all of Quest accessories suck. Like, they're not reliable. The product is awful. Every single time they break, there's nothing substantial. So we depend on the Kiwis, we depend on the VR covers, we depend on the Bobos. Like, I shouldn't have to depend on a third-party company to give me the comfort or give me extra battery power, whatever the case may be, when I'm coming to you as the main product maker to provide me with accessories that I may not want to wait on another third party to come and give me what I need. Is ridiculous. When we look at what is needed by Apple, affordability, something comfortable on someone's face, at the same time controllers, but continue giving that Apple-like experience. I still like that productivity within VR. Using that for the first time with Quest 3 was amazing. Having my MacBook in front of me, opening up the app Immerse or even Workspace, and be able to have upwards to 5 screens open at one time and everything flow so smoothly, and be able to see my keyboard and doing everything and still have it in mixed reality to where I can still see my surroundings around me. I'm not in like some fake environment. Was an amazing experience. There's even someone that created an app called Spatial App to where it's similar to the Vision Pro on Quest 3. People like the layout and like what you do with it. I think if they're gonna jump into the gaming space, come on full force. Yes, there may be ports, understandable, but make some great controllers that people can afford, make great accessories that people can afford, and make it comfortable. And I think Apple truly does have a chance. They have that dedicated fan base, and we all want competition. So for sure, I'm looking forward to see what Apple does. When it comes down to PCVR, I think really it comes down to that being the enthusiast crowd, the games. But at the same time, I can see that being an issue on the PCVR side, because I liken PCVR to where we are in the console space for both Sony and Microsoft, to where it's all about graphics, and there's no return in the investment. Not for the consumer, but for the developer. If I'm spending a movie budget on a game, you should want a movie budget return, but in reality, gaming's not in that realm. So while the masses want, well, not even the masses, but that minority of the enthusiasts that want that big graphical fidelity, being immersed and everything that comes with it, we're far down the road with that. I think right now it should be about experiences and not just visuals. I'm not saying it has to be the ugliest thing. It just needs to be something that really is appealing on the eyes. It could be something of an art style. And, you look at something like Underdogs, it's a beautiful art style. Like, it is real grimy. It's supposed to be this, underground fighting ring within a robot. And they pull it off, and they don't have to make it look realistic. And I think that's where we've gotten stuck, is this realism, as if realism is the only art that exists. There's a reason why we have so many different art forms within, painting or music or whatever the case may be. Like, there's different art forms here, and the same thing can be done from a graphical standpoint. It's just more need to make it so that way the masses can see it, because honestly, there are a lot of channels and there are a lot of videos that kind of point you to, oh, it just needs to look real. I see real people every day. I don't need that within my games. So I think with PCVR, continue doing what you're doing, but it's going to be hard to develop for PCVR when the masses can't afford the type of PC that comes with it. Most say, oh, you only have to spend on 800. That may or may not be true. I don't really know. To be honest with you, even if I'm spending 8, at the least I'm spending about 5 on my Quest 3. So you're already talking about a $1,300 range, to where if I just buy the Quest, I'm at the $500 mark and I'm straight. So you just have to be affordable and accessible, and it needs to really be more of a Steam box situation, to where if I want to get into PCVR, you say this is the best box for that, and then sell it with a headset that fits that, whether you partner with Meta or if you make your own, you partner with HTC, whoever, to give someone that experience, so that way they don't have to go and dig for it. It's already, I guess you say, curated for them to get what it is that they're looking for. And then to kind of go into PSVR2, I think the bigger issue with PSVR2 right now is the lack of games people expect to see from Sony. I'm not saying there are no games there. There are. It's just a lot of ports, but even with the new games coming out, a lot go to Quest first, or they're just something people want to go to Quest for because it's wireless. And I think that's going to always be an issue. But if Sony can find a way to make something God of War or something Spider-Man to where people don't get sick, or, make something, more with Gran Turismo to where that's amazing, but to get that full experience, you got to buy a steering wheel, so therefore there's more cost there. Really make a UI experience too, because it's flat screen to go into VR. There is no VR experience when you're going into these games, which is very weird. The moment that I go into VR, I want to feel immersed. Even if it's mixed reality, I still feel like I'm immersed in something, to where it's like screens floating around, opposed to me, okay, I'm going to screen selecting the game like I'm playing my PS5 and calling it a day. Like, it didn't seem like it was fully baked in. It was an afterthought. You can tell it was an afterthought. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do, but I think really what would drive the PSVR 2 home is if Sony gave it that quality love, not third-party stuff, or even adding a VR mode from Capcom with Resident Evil, because in itself, that's still not Sony. I mean, no one else can do it, but still, that's still not Sony. and that's not what people expect from Sony. People expect a Sony experience. Hell, even if you brought Uncharted back just for a VR aspect, that'd be amazing. Like going through excavating and doing puzzles and doing your shootouts and things of that nature for Uncharted within VR would be amazing. They have the IPs, they have the franchises, they just have to then do a VR aspect of it, and that's where a lot of people are pissed with the Astro Bot. I understand it from a business perspective, get more people on it from the flat game side, but with it having its game on PSVR, you couldn't carry it over because nothing was backwards compatible, and then this next game didn't have anything VR related. I can see where people were getting pissed off. So for Horizon to be the only Sony IP to really have a game right now, it's kind of telling. So I mean, when we look at games that need to succeed, it's kind of like that next step I want to go to. The type of games. You got tons of shooters in VR. It's almost like that's all people can think of is shooters. But there are so many different games, from platformers, even if you're kind of like from the outset looking in on controlling characters, you can do that. Seeing some creative games, like I mentioned with Underdog, to where you're within a robot. I feel like that's the best situation right there. Flying airplanes is amazing. I just hate I can't do it. When you look at games like Ultra Wings 2, amazing game. It's just, man, it takes me out. I get very nauseous, and using the visual blockers takes you out of the experience. So it's kind of difficult, but there are so many games that we need within VR. I've always expressed that Yu-Gi-Oh should have been there. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh should have been a no-brainer for that one. The same thing with Beyblades, same thing with a Pokemon style game. All those games or type of games should have been in VR by now. Somebody should have created them by now. You can just kind of look at flat screen games and say, okay, would this work in VR? Even something as simple as like Aspire 2, to where they took a game where you kind of control a robot or android or whatever and kind of maneuver around on like some covert ops type thing. But when mixed reality came in with Quest 3, now you got people around in your house, and you can sneak around and shoot, and even put your controller up to your mouth and say things, and they would do it. So it's like, oh, put your hands up, or get down on the ground, or anything like that. Like, that was amazing. Or me put my controller up here like this, and it'll change the visuals within the game. Like that lets you know that company took time to think about what it is somebody could actually do within VR. It is kind of that next step that people really have to start thinking out of the box. And I think what makes people think out of the box is when they're limited with assets and things of that nature. When we look back at our previous generations, to where we felt like we got some of our best games out of those generations because there was the lack of graphics and lack of, I guess you say, hardware to really get their visual dream, if you will. But to kind of wrap this up, man, I feel like where we are in VR right now is a beautiful place because we have multiple headsets. I hate that Pico went under. I mean, it is what it is, but hopefully there's more that continue being in the game. Hopefully HTC, comes out with their Deckard. Hopefully Quest really takes this a little bit more serious now that they see Apple come in. I feel like the moment Vision Pro popped up, this is the most substantial updates we've received in quite some time, especially with version 67, right? So I feel like we're in a good space with VR. I think when you consume VR a little too much, you start feeling like we're not there fast enough. You feel burnt out. You feel like either, we're not getting the games we want, or, we are getting some, but just not enough. I think when you involve yourself with something way too much, you feel like things are moving in a slow pace because you're just consuming it so much, you want it so much. It's a dopamine hit, right? So I understand from a content creator perspective, you want to involve everything because you want to have everybody involved. But as a average consumer, honestly, I feel like we're in a great spot. I have so many games that I just purchased after watching that Upload VR showcase. I mean, there's tons that I would love to try out. There are some games from the sales, MetaQuest Plus, with the subscription service of having those catalog of games, and then also giving you 2 games a month, similar to Sony and Microsoft. Being able to having my kids on different headsets is amazing, and that's something that the other 3 are missing out on. Like, being able to connect with people within your own home on different headsets, being able to share games with one another. But all in all, I feel like it's on a good trajectory. I think people wanted to move too fast to where you look at flat screen gaming. It took a while to get here. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're getting ready to go on the 10th generation, to where when we talk about VR, I don't even know where you would count it generation wise, because there's so many people that have fallen in and out, and this is Quest's third iteration into it if you don't count the Pro. But yeah, I mean, it's in its infancy right now, and you got to continue to support it. You got to continue to create, and you got to continue to do your thing. Plenty of great games, but I think it's in a good space. And if you ever want to know channels to go to that really do great reviews, or if you just really want to express how you feel about VR, just let me know down in the comments. Be sure to like the video, and then also too, like I said, come and talk to me on X. Come on the Winging It podcast. You know, you'll hear me talk about VR from time to time there, or even Sandstorm or Vitoverse, you know, whatever the case may be. So I thank y'all for your time. I know it's been a long one, but I had a lot to get out. You know, it's been a while since I made a video, so look forward to more videos. I might try to do some gameplays. It's kind of hard to do when it comes down to recording, and I'm not the biggest fan of editing, so I just like to come on here, talk, say my piece, and, you know, call it a day. You know what I mean? So, but thank you again for your time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying subscribed. And if you're new, welcome. And it's been your boy Action Jack. I'm out. Peace.